I need to tell you a story about what things were like on 8chan during the very first days of Q. We're going to go back even before Frederick believes Jim would have taken over the account. I'm telling you about this for a couple of reasons. First, because the most compelling evidence for who started Q, all of it lies in the mechanics of just how this message board works. Once you can read 8chan, you can watch the Q show and see all the special effects. You can watch as the stagehands accidentally get in the shot sometimes. The people behind this are going to make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are frankly very funny. But also because before I got this, I would have told you that something like QAnon was inevitable. Every year, just like the flu, some new conspiracy would sweep through America involving pedophiles or Hillary Clinton. What is the point of understanding the mechanics of something that's inevitable? But once you really get the story of Q, you understand that it involves a bunch of people who, while they are completely bumbling when it comes to telling the lie, they're very savvy when it comes to spreading it. And knowing that people did this on purpose and how they did it, that feels important to me in a way that goes beyond Jim Watkins or anybody else. Okay, so in the very beginning, QAnon sounded unremarkable. It was just one more lie being told by an anonymous liar on a message board that was full of them. Frederick did not take it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first heard about Q, I just thought that it was a troll, basically, and that it was just somebody having a laugh and kind of tricking people, you know what I mean? And posting vague Nostradamus-like messages. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have in the beginning. I don't think a lot of people did, you know what I mean?
Back then, a lot of people on 8chan were actually already doing a similar stunt. When I talked to that journalist, Dale Baran, he told me he'd spent a lot of time on 8chan. He wrote a book about it. The way he explained it to me, back in 2016, this was a game that people on the boards would play together. One person would LARP. They'd pretend to be some highly placed government official leaking secrets. Like, one guy claimed that Thomas Jefferson had actually been a foreign spy, and that while it was true that he'd written the Declaration of Independence, quote, he was brought into the process by American intelligence that knew he was a traitor and were working him all along. There was high-level Anon, FBI Anon, CIA Anon.
There was White House Insider Anon. They all had goofy names, and they were all doing the exact same role play.
It's like they were having a costume party, but it sounds like in those early days, everyone knew it was a costume party, or no?
Yeah, everyone knew. I mean, very few people, I think, were true believers.
In October 2017, a user calling themselves QAnon, Q referring to their Q-level security clearance, posted their first message. It was a response to a different bullshit message someone else had posted where they'd claimed that Hillary Clinton would be arrested the following Monday. Actually, Q informed everybody, her extradition had already begun. According to Q's post, HRC extradition already in motion effective yesterday with several countries in case of cross-border run. Passport approved to be flagged effective 10:30 at 12:01 a.m. Not only that, Q also said that anyone who didn't believe him should locate a local National Guards member and ask to see their deployment orders because the National Guard obviously had been tasked with bringing Clinton to justice. I talked to a guy named Mike Rothschild. He's an author who studies conspiracy theories. And he says that when the first Q drop appeared, you could tell the audience on the board wasn't actually buying it. But within 10 to 15 posts, it was just like the mood in the room had already started to change.
You know, they're starting to get into the idea of Hillary Clinton being arrested and of John Podesta getting arrested. And, you know, you're never quite clear if they're just sort of here's a new game, we're going to start playing it, or if they really think, yeah, he's going down. You're never 100% sure what's real and what's a goof in a place like this.
Right, because you have no context, and the difference between someone who is playing the character of credulous interviewer versus someone who's just being duped, there's no way to tell.
Right.
After a month on the site, in November 2017, Q announces that 4chan has been, quote, infiltrated, and then moved the whole operation to what would become their permanent home, 8chan. The way I think of it, it's like 4chan was where Q piloted the show. But 8chan is where season 1 really starts. And on 8chan, Q posted exclusively on this one subboard called CBTS, Calm Before the Storm, owned by a middle-aged man from Johannesburg named Paul Ferber.
So I was the board owner there, and then Q actually then started posting there on the 2nd or the 3rd of December.
Paul Ferber seemed to take Q completely seriously. He wouldn't talk to us, but this is from an interview he gave to another Q believer.
We had spectacular predictions by Q on the board. He told us all sorts of things about how the world works. It was amazing. It was the most incredible intelligence leak in history.
So who is Paul Ferber, this man whose board was home to the greatest intelligence leak in history? According to his Twitter bio, he is, quote, a journo, programmer, artist, musician, pilot, teacher, luthier, biker, Christian, medicine seller. The Q who lived on Paul Ferber's board was becoming a hit. He was gaining a small following of believers. But there was a problem. 8chan was not designed for the government super spy. Most people on the site didn't have usernames. They posted completely anonymously. And if, like Q, you wanted to post as yourself every time, the problem was that cracking passwords on 8chan was notoriously easy. Q's first password, I can tell you, because it was cracked, was Matlock. And once it was cracked, anybody could post as Q, on 8chan or on 4chan. It worked in both places. Dale Brand, the journalist, he told me about it.
Even today, I could put in Q at Matlock, and then if I wanted to put a post on 4chan, it would appear exactly under Q's old trip code, which I did to test it while I was writing the article.
Whoa, so you've also posted as Q?
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't really at this point?
I mean, I haven't. What did you say?
I mean, you got to... I don't like looking at 4chan because it's full of gross stuff. So there's Pol, which is the fascist board, and then there's PO, the papercraft and origami board. I went to PO, and as someone posted a nice piece of origami, and I posted as Q, I said, looks good.
But now I definitively know one person who has been Q, which is you.
Sure. Well, who hasn't indulged?
A lot of people indulged. On 8chan, once you have a username and password, you can't change the password. So when Q got cracked, they had to make a new account. And it was Paul Ferber's job to verify that the person posting as Q today was the same person who'd been posting the day before. And the reason he could do that is because as board owner, he had access to user login information. He could see scrambled versions of their IP addresses. According to Paul, it was a lot of work, but it was something he'd been called to do.
This has been like a full-time job for me, but it hasn't paid anything. I'm doing it for personal reasons because I want to do the right thing, and also because I've researched child trafficking and ritual abuse and the elites for many years now. So when this all started happening, I thought, oh yeah, you need to get involved here because you have knowledge that can help the cause.
Paul Ferber, a man who had been marinating in conspiracy theories since the 1990s, he seemed like an ideal super spreader for Q nonsense. The world's most credulous disciple had fallen in love with a perfect charlatan. And Q actually loved Paul Ferber right back. He shouted him out personally in Q Drop 393. Quote, board owners, that's Paul, mods and other patriots, sincere thanks for all you do. You're true heroes. There will be a day within the next few months that a scary but safe, personalized message finds its way to you on multiple platforms recognizing your contributions. This drop is the equivalent of Q telling Paul Ferber he's going to send him his own fruit basket. Frederick Brennan has a slightly different take on this very cozy relationship. Did you have theories or instincts about who the actual person might have been, assuming there was an original Q?
Yep, I think it's Paul Ferber. Yeah.
Oh.
I think Ferber was most likely Q, the original Q.
Frederick believes that the man writing the original Q drops was Paul Ferber himself. Paul Ferber has denied this, and I will say this is the part of Frederick's theory that he has the least amount of evidence for. There's a ring of disciples around early Q, could have been any or all of them. Part of the reason I relay it is because it is extremely fun to imagine the pickle that Paul Ferber may have ended up in, if he was Q. Because in Frederick's telling, once Q started to take off, Paul Ferber would have had a problem. His own ego. He would have wanted to take credit, but he wouldn't have been able to because Q was supposed to be a secret government super spy, not some luthier in Johannesburg. And Frederick believes that that explains why Paul starts to constantly emphasize how he really gets Q. It was like Bruce Wayne running around Gotham talking about how Batman always does sleepovers at his house.
The Anons didn't really like him very much because he was getting, the way my mother would put it, is too big for his britches. So he was posting things like, I serve at the pleasure of the president. I serve at the pleasure of Q.
People were feeling jealous, basically.
Yes, they were jealous because he was saying that he was having private communication with Q and that he was filtering it basically out to them. And one of the big things, especially in early Q, was that it's a research movement and nobody is higher than anybody else. So by Ferber saying that he was having private contact with Q, which might have been true, nobody knows, right?
He was violating the spirit of their thing.
Yes.
So there's a growing perception that Paul Ferber is using Q to promote himself. And then Paul goes on TV.
Defending the Republic from enemies, foreign and domestic.